One wrong step, and an 800-pound boulder crushed his arm in a silent Utah canyon. No phone signal, no rescue. Just 5 days of thirst, fear, and one impossible choice to stay alive. Listen closely. This is a true American survival story. In April 2003, a 27-year-old American named Aron Ralston drove alone into the remote deserts of Utah. He didn't tell anyone exactly where he was going. No phone call, no detailed plan, no warning. Aron loved adventure. He was the kind of person who trusted his strength, his experience, and his instincts. That day, he was exploring narrow desert canyons, moving between tall red rock walls that looked ancient and silent. The air was dry, the sky was clear, and everything felt peaceful, almost too peaceful. He climbed down into a tight canyon path, stepping carefully between the stone surfaces. His backpack was light, his confidence was heavy, but then one small decision changed everything, and within seconds, Aron would face a nightmare that most people can't even imagine surviving. As Aron moved deeper into the canyon, the space around him narrowed. The walls grew taller, and sunlight became thin lines far above his head. He stepped onto a rock slab, using his hands for balance. Under his weight, the stone shifted slightly. It wasn't supposed to move, but it did. In the next moment, the rock slipped. A massive boulder, later estimated at around 800 pounds, collapsed with terrifying force. Aron didn't even have time to scream. The boulder pinned his right arm against the canyon wall, crushing it tight like a vice. His hand was trapped. His elbow couldn't bend. His shoulder couldn't pull free. He yanked, he twisted, he pushed with his legs. Nothing moved. Then the canyon went quiet again, as if the desert didn't care what just happened. Aron looked at his trapped arm and slowly realized one brutal truth. He was completely alone. At first, Aron believed he could escape quickly. He told himself it was just a problem to solve. He tried using his small pocket knife, stabbing at the rock, searching for any crack, any weakness. But the boulder didn't budge. Hours passed. His water supply was limited. His food was minimal. And the canyon had no easy way out without his arm. He shouted for help again and again. "Hello? Help me! Is anyone there?" But his voice disappeared into the stone corridors like it was swallowed whole. As the sun began to drop, the air turned colder. Shadows stretched across the canyon floor. Aron sat down, breathing slowly, trying not to panic. That night, he listened to the wind moving above the canyon, and he understood something terrifying. No one was coming, and if he didn't do something impossible, he would die right there, trapped in silence. Morning arrived, but Aron's situation didn't change. His arm was still trapped under the boulder, and the canyon felt colder than before. He tried again to move the rock, using his legs to push and his free hand to pull. Nothing. The boulder was like part of the earth itself. He checked what he had: a little water, 2 burritos, some chocolate, a small knife, a climbing tool, and a camera. Not much, and no cell signal. Aron began to think carefully. He wasn't just stuck. He was running out of time. Every hour meant more dehydration, more pain, and less strength. That day, he carved his name and the date into the wall, quietly acknowledging the possibility that this might be the place where his story ended. Aron started recording messages on his small video camera. He spoke softly, trying not to waste energy. He told his family that he loved them. He apologized for leaving without telling anyone his exact plans. He wasn't making a movie. He was leaving proof, a goodbye. Then he took a sip of water, carefully measuring each drop like it was gold. The desert air stole moisture from his skin and his breath. He could feel his lips drying, cracking. He tried to stay calm by focusing on simple things, counting time, staying awake, staying aware. But as the hours passed, his thoughts became darker. He imagined rescue teams arriving too late. He pictured his body hidden in the canyon, unseen for months. And still he kept talking into the camera, because the sound of his own voice reminded him that he was alive. By the second day, Aron's arm had swollen badly. It wasn't just trapped. It was injured, crushed, and starting to feel numb. That scared him even more than the pain. Numbness meant damage, permanent damage. He tried pulling in different directions. He tried using ropes from his gear. He even tried breaking the rock with his small tool. But the canyon gave him no mercy. Every plan failed. Aron began to understand the horrible math of survival. His water would run out first, then his strength, then his mind. At night, he slept in short bursts, waking up to the same nightmare. The same boulder. The same trapped arm. He whispered to himself, "Think. Stay alive." But deep inside, another voice started asking the question he didn't want to hear. What if the only way out was unthinkable? Aron remembered something important. Years earlier, he had been taught about emergency situations. He had heard the phrase, "Do what you have to do." But in training, those words felt easy. In real life, they were terrifying. He looked at his knife. It was small, dull, and never meant for anything extreme. Still, his mind kept drifting toward one horrible idea. Could he cut his arm free? At first, he rejected it instantly. No human wants to imagine that. No normal mind would accept it. But as the hours passed, the canyon forced him to face reality. He couldn't lift the boulder. He couldn't move his arm. No one knew where he was. Aron stared at the trapped limb and realized this wasn't a question of bravery. It was a question of survival. On the third day, Aron's water was almost gone. He had been rationing it carefully, but there was no way to stop dehydration completely. He felt weak, dizzy. His mouth tasted dry and bitter. The desert sun kept rising and setting, like nothing had changed. Birds flew above. Wind moved over the rocks. But in the canyon, time felt frozen. Aron began hallucinating small sounds, distant voices, footsteps, movement. He would lift his head, hoping someone had arrived. But it was always silence. He thought about his parents, about friends he never called back, about the future he might never get. And then something strange happened. He started picturing a child, a little boy, a future son he didn't have yet. That image stayed with him, like a message. Your life isn't over. Not here. Aron didn't act immediately. He spent hours preparing himself mentally. He knew that panic would kill him faster than the canyon would. He recorded another message on his camera. His voice was soft but steady. He said he didn't know if anyone would ever see this, but he wanted the world to understand that he tried. He drank the last of his water. Only a few drops remained. Then he did something that sounded impossible. He began to plan how to break his own bones, not with rage, not with desperation, with logic. He realized his knife wasn't sharp enough to cut through healthy bone. So his first goal had to be something else. He needed to make his trapped arm smaller, weaker, breakable. It wasn't bravery. It was survival math. Outside, the sun rose again, and Aron knew the moment was coming. That night, Aron dreamed he was holding that child in his arms. In the dream, the boy's face was bright and real, like sunlight. Aron felt love so strong it shocked him awake. He sat there in the darkness, breathing slowly, letting the dream settle in his heart. It didn't feel random. It felt like a reason. He looked at his trapped arm again. He didn't hate it. He didn't blame it. But he understood something deeply. A part of him might have to be sacrificed so the rest could live. He took out his tools and tested his strength. He pressed his knife against the skin lightly, then pulled it away, shaking. His body screamed no. His mind screamed no. But a quiet voice inside him whispered, "Yes, if you want to survive." Aron used his climbing tool as leverage, pressing it against his trapped arm in the tight space. He focused on one part of the limb, trying to create pressure where the bone might snap. He gritted his teeth, breathing through the pain. His whole body trembled. Sweat mixed with dust on his skin. After several attempts, he realized something heartbreaking. His arm was trapped too tightly. There wasn't enough space to create the force he needed. He stopped and leaned his head back against the canyon wall. For a moment, he felt defeated. Then he looked upward. The canyon walls were still there, towering and indifferent. He was still alone. Aron closed his eyes and whispered, "I'm not dying here." And that's when he changed strategy. If he couldn't break the bone the normal way, he would do it another way, something more direct, something final. With almost no water left, Aron had one last option. He tightened a tourniquet using the straps from his equipment. Trying to control bleeding and reduce danger, he prepared in silence. His movements were slow, careful, almost ritual-like, like someone setting up for a moment that would define their entire life. He spoke into the camera again. His eyes looked tired but determined. He told his family he loved them. He told them not to blame themselves. He told them he fought as hard as he could. Then Aron placed his knife against the trapped arm. He didn't rush. He didn't scream. He took control of his breathing, like a man climbing a mountain with no room for mistakes. Pain came like a storm. But Aron didn't stop, because stopping meant dying, and somewhere in his mind, he could still see that future child waiting for him to live. Minutes felt like hours. Aron's body shook from shock and exhaustion, but his mind stayed locked onto one goal: freedom. He used every ounce of strength he had left, continuing through pain that most people would never survive. His breathing became broken, but he forced it steady again and again. Eventually, something changed. The pressure around his arm lessened slightly. A small movement, a sign that it was working. He didn't celebrate. He didn't relax. He kept going. And then at last, the impossible happened. Aron's arm came free. He fell backward, gasping, staring at the open space where the boulder was no longer holding him in place. For the first time in nearly 5 days, he could move his whole body. He was weak. He was injured. But he was alive. And now, he faced a new challenge: getting out of the canyon before it was too late. Aron wrapped his injury quickly, using whatever he had left: cloth, straps, anything. He knew he couldn't stay there. Shock could take him down fast. He grabbed his backpack with his remaining hand and stood up slowly. His legs were stiff. His body felt like it belonged to someone else. Still, he started walking. Each step was unsteady, but it was freedom. The canyon path ahead looked longer than ever, and the sun above felt too bright. But Aron kept moving. He climbed out of the narrow canyon and reached open ground. The desert stretched out in every direction, empty, silent and beautiful in a cruel way. He had no map in his hand, no water left, and he was severely weakened. But he remembered one thing: he had come in here for adventure. Now he was walking out for survival, and he still had miles to go. Aron estimated he still needed to hike several miles to reach his car. The distance felt unreal, like a journey meant for a healthy body, not someone barely holding on. He stumbled forward step by step, following what he remembered from the trail. His throat burned from thirst. His vision blurred at the edges. The desert heat hit him hard. Without water, the sun felt like a heavy hand pressing him down. He forced himself to keep moving by focusing on small goals. Just reach that rock, then just reach that next bend. Sometimes he laughed quietly, not because anything was funny, but because his mind was trying to stay awake. He knew the truth. If he fell and couldn't get back up, nobody would find him. But he refused to collapse. Somewhere ahead, civilization existed. Roads, people, life. Aron kept walking toward it, carrying nothing but determination and the will to live. After hours of stumbling through the desert, Aron finally saw something that looked like a miracle: people. A family was hiking nearby, enjoying the beautiful day, unaware of the nightmare Aron had escaped. When they noticed him, they froze. Aron looked injured, exhausted, and barely standing. He raised his good hand and spoke weakly, asking for water. The hikers rushed toward him and gave him what he needed most: a drink and human help. Aron drank slowly, carefully. That first sip wasn't just water. It was life returning to him. They helped him sit down, and one of them called for emergency rescue. Aron tried to explain what happened, but his voice trembled. Part of him still couldn't believe he was out. Soon a helicopter arrived, cutting through the desert sky. As Aron was lifted into the air, he looked down at the canyon. He had entered it alone, and somehow he was leaving alive. In the helicopter, Aron's body was weak, but his mind was awake. He watched the desert from above, seeing the canyon as a thin line in the land. It looked small from the sky. That made it even harder to believe what it had done to him. At the hospital, doctors moved quickly. Aron was treated for dehydration, blood loss, and injury. Medical teams worked to stabilize him, saving his life in the hours after rescue. News of his survival spread fast. People couldn't believe a person could endure that kind of situation and live. But Aron didn't feel like a hero in that moment. He felt like a human being who had been pushed to the edge of existence. He thought about the choices he made, the mistakes, the risk, the loneliness, and he understood something important. He survived, but he would never be the same person again. The desert had taken something from him, but it also gave him something back. A second chance. Recovery wasn't easy. Aron had to learn how to live differently. Simple things: tying shoes, opening doors, holding a cup, now required patience and practice. But what shocked people most wasn't what he lost. It was what he gained. Aron returned to climbing. He returned to the outdoors. Not because he forgot the danger, but because he refused to let fear steal his life. Over time, he became known across America as a symbol of survival. Not a perfect man, not a reckless man, a human being who faced a nightmare and refused to surrender. His story inspired books, interviews, and later a major movie called 127 Hours. But the deeper truth is quieter. Aron didn't survive because he was fearless. He survived because he was honest about reality. He accepted what was happening, and he chose to act. Many people hear this story and think, I could never. But Aron's life reminds us, we don't know what we can endure until we have no other choice. After the incident, one question followed Aron everywhere. Why didn't you tell anyone where you were going? Aron admitted the truth. He didn't think anything would happen. He had explored alone many times before. And like many adventurous people, he trusted his experience more than he trusted danger. That mistake became a lesson for hikers all over the United States. Today, search and rescue teams repeat the same advice. Always tell someone your plan, even if you think you'll be fine, because the desert is unpredictable. Mountains are unpredictable. Life is unpredictable. Aron's story changed how people think about solo adventures. His survival was incredible, but it also showed how close death can be, even on a normal day. In a way, Aron became a living warning sign. Not a warning that says don't explore, but a warning that says respect nature, respect your limits, and never assume you're too skilled to face disaster. The canyon didn't care who Aron was. It only cared about gravity, stone, and time, and Aron had to fight all three. Aron later said something powerful. The experience taught him what mattered most. Not money, not fame, not even adventure. It was connection, family, people, love. During those days, trapped in silence, he wasn't thinking about trophies or success. He was thinking about faces, voices, memories, moments he wished he could relive. That's what many Americans relate to in this story. Because deep down, most of us live busy lives, assuming we have unlimited time. Aron's story forces a different perspective. Time can disappear in one instant. And when it does, what remains is who you love and who loves you back. Even though this was a terrifying survival story, it became something else too, a reminder to appreciate life while you still have it. Aron didn't just escape a boulder, he escaped a mindset. He walked out of the canyon with a new understanding, that living is not guaranteed, and every day is a gift that can be lost without warning. That realization became a quiet part of his legacy, beyond headlines and movies. For a long time, Aron struggled with the memories. Even after healing, his mind returned to the canyon at night. In dreams, he would feel trapped again, unable to move, unable to breathe. Survival doesn't always end when rescue arrives. Sometimes it follows you home. But Aron learned how to carry the experience without letting it destroy him. He spoke openly about fear, about regret, about the heavy weight of responsibility. He didn't pretend he was perfect. He told people the truth. He made mistakes, and the desert punished him for it. That honesty made him more relatable than any superhero story ever could. Because real life isn't clean. Real life doesn't give warnings. Americans who heard his story didn't just admire him, they saw themselves. People thought about their own lives, their own risks, the times they drove somewhere without telling anyone, the times they assumed nothing could happen. And that's why this story stays powerful. It isn't just about surviving a canyon. It's about realizing how fragile we are and how strong we can become when survival demands everything. The canyon where Aron was trapped became famous. Some hikers visited it out of curiosity. Others went there to pay quiet respect. People left notes, small symbols, a reminder that something unbelievable happened in that narrow space between stone walls. But even with attention and fame, the canyon remains the same, silent, empty, uncaring. That's the strange truth about nature. It doesn't remember your suffering. It doesn't celebrate your survival. It simply exists. Aron returned to the area later, not for thrill, but for closure. Imagine walking back toward the place where you almost died. Not with fear, but with gratitude. He stood near the rocks again, and the memory came back like a wave. But this time he wasn't trapped. He was free, and he understood something. Pain can become a teacher, not a prison. That's what makes this story more than just a shocking event. It becomes a lesson about choosing life, choosing growth, and refusing to be defined by the worst moment you ever face. Many people ask, how did Aron stay mentally strong? The answer isn't simple. He didn't stay strong every moment. Sometimes he cried. Sometimes he felt hopeless. Sometimes he almost gave up. But he kept doing one important thing. He kept thinking forward. He didn't just imagine surviving. He imagined living after survival. That future became his anchor. This is something therapists and survival experts often mention. The mind needs a reason. The body follows the mind. Aron's reason was love, his family, his unfinished life, even the dream of a child he hadn't met yet. When you're alone in silence, your thoughts become loud. Some thoughts destroy you, others save you. Aron chose the thoughts that saved him. And for many listeners in America, that is the most inspiring part. Not the painful decision, not the rescue helicopter, but the quiet, steady refusal to surrender when no one was watching and no one could help. That's what real strength looks like. It doesn't always roar. Sometimes it simply whispers, "Keep going." After his recovery, Aron became a public speaker. He visited schools, events, and groups, sharing his story with people who needed hope. Some were struggling with illness. Some were dealing with heartbreak. Some were facing life changes they didn't choose. And Aron reminded them that survival isn't always physical. Sometimes survival is emotional. Sometimes it's mental. He told people that tragedy can become transformation if you let it. But he never glorified the accident. He never suggested anyone should take extreme risks. Instead, he encouraged something simple: live fully, but live wisely. That message resonates deeply in the United States, where many people chase independence and adventure. Americans admire freedom, but they also understand consequences. Aron's story sits right between those two ideas. Freedom without preparation can become danger, but courage with awareness can become power. That balance is what makes this real-life story so unforgettable. And even now, years later, people still listen late at night, imagining the canyon, feeling the silence and realizing life can change in a heartbeat, and we should never take it for granted. There's another part of Aron's story people don't always talk about. The quiet moments after rescue. Not the headlines, not the interviews, the moments when the hospital room went still and Aron had to sit with his thoughts. He remembered the canyon, the sound of the boulder falling, the feeling of being pinned, the fear that came in waves. He remembered his own voice yelling for help and hearing nothing in return. Those memories didn't vanish just because he survived. They stayed like shadows. But Aron learned something powerful. The human mind can carry pain and still move forward. He didn't erase his trauma. He transformed it into purpose, and that is why his story continues to inspire Americans. It proves that survival isn't about being unbreakable. It's about being broken and still choosing to stand up. Many people listening to this story have their own struggles. Some are small, some are heavy. Aron's life reminds them you might feel trapped today. But there is always a path out. Not always easy, not always quick, but possible. And sometimes the first step is simply believing you can survive. If you listen closely, Aron's story carries a warning for modern life too. We live in a world full of technology, phones, GPS, apps, emergency services. Yet people still vanish in nature, still get trapped, still get lost, because technology can fail. Batteries die, signals disappear, and nature doesn't care about your device. Aron's incident happened in 2003, but the lesson feels timeless. In America, countless hikers and climbers go out every year. Most return safely, but accidents still happen. That's why search and rescue teams always repeat the basics. Bring extra water, tell someone your route, and respect the environment. Aron became the living proof of that advice. His story makes people think, what would I do? Not in a dramatic way, but in a deeply human way. Would I panic? Would I survive? Would I stay calm? The truth is, none of us know until life tests us. But hearing real stories like this helps us prepare mentally. It helps us respect danger without living in fear. And that's the quiet power of true storytelling. It wakes people up without shouting. Years after the incident, Aron's name became part of American culture. People referenced him in conversations about strength and survival. But Aron always tried to keep the story grounded. He didn't want it to become a legend that felt unreal. Because it wasn't unreal. It was painfully real. He explained that survival was not a single heroic moment. It was many small decisions repeated again and again. Drink less water. Stay calm, conserve energy, and keep your mind working. Those details matter, because they show how survival truly happens. In the canyon, Aron didn't have a superpower. He had a mind that refused to stop searching for options. That's why people keep listening, even if they already know the ending. Because the ending isn't the point. The point is the process. The slow, silent fight against time. Against fear, against loneliness. And if you're listening at night, maybe tired from your own life, Aron's story can feel strangely comforting. It says hardship is real, but so is endurance. And even when you feel trapped, there may still be a way out. Many survival experts later studied Aron's case. They talked about the environment, the canyon design, and how quickly accidents can trap someone without warning. Slot canyons are narrow, smooth, and beautiful, but they can also be dangerous. One fallen rock, one slip, one wrong angle, and escape becomes impossible. Aron had walked into a place where human strength meant nothing compared to stone. In America, nature is often seen as a place to relax, but the wilderness has its own rules. It can be peaceful and deadly at the same time. Aron's story became an example. He used to teach hikers and outdoor lovers how to plan better. And yet, even with all the lessons, the emotional impact remains the same. A young man, alone, trapped, running out of water, staring at the sky through a thin opening. That image stays in people's minds because it represents something bigger than hiking. It represents the moments in life where we feel stuck, where we can't undo what happened, and we must decide whether to break down or rise up. Aron chose to rise up even when the world looked impossible. Sometimes the most powerful part of Aron's story is what he did not do. He didn't blame the canyon. He didn't curse the world. He didn't waste energy on anger. Instead, he accepted reality quickly and focused on solutions. That kind of mindset is rare, and it's something many Americans admire because it represents responsibility, not victimhood. Aron knew he made mistakes. He owned them, and that honesty became a huge part of why people trusted him. He didn't survive because he was lucky. He survived because he stayed present. In many interviews later, Aron spoke about gratitude, not in a fake way, in a deeply human way. He said that being close to death made him appreciate life more than ever before. And that's a message that reaches people at night, when everything gets quiet and the mind becomes honest. If you're listening right now, maybe you can feel it too. Life is fragile. Time is precious. Love matters. A canyon trapped Aron's body, but it also unlocked something inside him. Clarity. And sometimes true stories are like that. They scare us, and they wake us up. They remind us to live. Aron's story didn't end with survival. It expanded. It became a part of American history of real-life resilience. People who never climbed a canyon still felt connected to his experience. Because everyone understands fear. Everyone understands being stuck. Everyone understands the desire to survive. That's what makes this story universal. It happened in the deserts of Utah, but it could have happened in any place where humans meet nature and underestimate it. And now, when people talk about courage, Aron's name often comes up, not because he wanted fame, but because his life became proof of what a human being can endure. Tonight, as you listen, remember this: the darkest moments don't always destroy you. Sometimes they reveal who you truly are. Aron Ralston walked into a canyon alone, thinking it was just another adventure. But he walked out as someone else, someone who understood life in a deeper way. And maybe that's why this story stays with people. Because it isn't just a survival story. It's a reminder, when life gives you impossible choices, you might surprise yourself with what you're capable of. Even today, Americans still hike alone, chasing silence and freedom. That desire makes sense. Nature feels like an escape from stress, screens, and noise. But Aron's experience adds a quiet truth. Solitude can become danger in seconds. The wilderness doesn't announce its threats. It doesn't give you time to prepare. One mistake can turn peace into panic. Aron's story reminds listeners to respect the simple rules of safety, especially when you're alone. Tell someone where you're going. Bring extra water. Carry a reliable emergency signal if possible, because survival is not always about strength. It's about preparation. And still, the most haunting part remains the silence of that canyon. No voices, no footsteps, only Aron's breath and his thoughts. If you've ever felt alone in your life, even in a crowded city, you might understand what he faced. And that's why people keep listening. Because deep down, this isn't just a story about rocks and desert. It's a story about the human heart refusing to give up. After the movie 127 Hours came out, thousands of people learned Aron's name for the first time. The film was intense, emotional, and unforgettable. But the real story was even more personal. Because in real life, there were no dramatic soundtracks. No perfect camera angles. Just silence, heat, and time passing. Aron later explained that time moved strangely in that canyon. Minutes felt endless and nights felt colder than they should. His body was suffering, but his mind was fighting a different battle. Fear. Fear of dying unseen. Fear of being forgotten. Fear of making the wrong choice. Yet he kept thinking, planning, and adjusting. That's what survivors do. They don't rely on hope alone. They rely on action. Americans often celebrate big moments, victory, applause, rescue. But Aron's story teaches a quieter kind of courage. The courage to stay calm when no one is coming. And in that silence, he didn't just survive. He transformed. Some people ask why Aron returned to adventure after everything. The answer is simple but powerful. He refused to let fear own him. If he stopped living fully, then the canyon would still be controlling his life, even after he escaped it. So Aron continued climbing, hiking, and exploring. But he did it differently. He planned more. He respected nature more. He understood limits. That change is important, because real strength is not repeating the same mistakes. Real strength is learning. In American culture, many people love stories of independence. The idea of going alone, proving yourself, finding freedom. Aron's story doesn't destroy that dream. It deepens it. It says independence is powerful, but responsibility is part of freedom. And that's a lesson many listeners feel in their bones, even if they've never stepped into a canyon. We all have moments where we think we're in control until life proves otherwise. Aron survived because he accepted that reality faster than fear could break him, and that acceptance may be the most important skill of all. Imagine the moment Aron took his first steps away from the boulder. After days of being trapped, movement must have felt unreal, like waking up from a nightmare you thought would never end. But freedom didn't mean safety yet. He was still alone, still weak, still in a desert with no water. That part of the story often gets overlooked. People focus on the canyon moment, but the hike afterward was also life or death. He had to move with limited strength under a burning sun, carrying pain like a weight on his back. He could have collapsed. He could have fainted. He could have disappeared in the open land, never reaching help. But he didn't. He kept walking, because survival is often one long decision repeated. One more step, then another. In America, people love the idea of never quitting. But Aron's story shows what that really means. Not motivational quotes, not slogans. Just breathing, moving, and refusing to stop, even when everything in your body begs you to end it. That is endurance. Quiet, steady, real. Audio 30. When Aron met the hikers who helped him, it was a reminder that kindness can arrive at the exact moment you need it most. Those people didn't know him. They didn't know him anything, but they gave him water, comfort, and immediate help. That part is very American too. Strangers helping strangers in a crisis. In moments of emergency, humanity often shows its best side, and Aron's rescue was proof of that. Later, Aron expressed deep gratitude toward them. He called their presence a miracle, but also a result of persistence. If he had collapsed earlier, he might never have been found. Sometimes survival depends on timing, but timing only matters if you keep moving. That's why this story stays so powerful. It's not just about suffering. It's about the moment the world finally answers back. If you're listening late at night, maybe you felt trapped in your own way, by stress, by sadness, by life. Aron's story whispers a gentle message. Keep going, because help might be closer than you think. And the next step might be the one that changes everything. After everything, Aron didn't hide. He didn't disappear from the world. He chose to share his story, even though it was painful. That takes a different kind of courage. Not the courage of survival in the desert, but the courage of being honest in public. He talked about his mistake, about his fear, about his loneliness, about the reality that nobody knew where he was. In America, people often try to appear strong, but real strength sometimes means admitting you were wrong. Aron did that. And because of it, his story became more than a shocking event. It became a lesson that saved others. Many hikers have said they changed their habits after hearing about him. Some started carrying extra water. Some stopped hiking alone. Some began leaving detailed travel plans. That ripple effect matters. It means Aron's survival became a form of protection for others. Tragedy turned into education. Pain turned into guidance. And maybe that's the most meaningful part. Not the fear, not the boulder, but the fact that one person's worst moment helped strangers live safer lives afterward. That is impact. Quiet, real, and lasting. The desert canyon where Aron was trapped still exists. It's still silent, still narrow, still beautiful. Nature doesn't erase itself because something terrible happened. It doesn't change shape out of sympathy. It remains the same, and that can feel strange to people. We expect the world to remember, but the wilderness doesn't remember. Only humans do. That's why stories matter. They carry memory. They carry warning. They carry meaning. In a way, Aron's story is now part of America's collection of survival legends, but unlike many legends, this one is real. There are no myths here, no fantasy, just one man, one canyon, one boulder, and one impossible choice. If you think about it, the story is almost too intense to be true. But it is true, and that is what makes it unforgettable. The The canyon didn't care whether Aron lived or died. But Aron cared. Aron fought. Aron chose life. And that choice turned him into a symbol, not of perfection, but of persistence. Tonight, as your mind relaxes, remember, real courage often happens when nobody is watching. And sometimes the biggest battles are fought in silence. People love true stories because they feel closer than fiction. They remind us that real life can be more intense than any movie. Aron's experience is proof of that. If you think about your own daily life, work, errands, responsibilities, this story feels like another universe. But that's the scary part. It wasn't another universe. It happened on a normal day, during a normal hike. Disaster didn't send a warning letter. It arrived instantly, and that's why Americans listen closely to this story. Because it reflects something real about life. You never truly know what's coming next. But the story also carries hope. It shows that humans have hidden reserves of strength. Even when your body is tired, your mind can find a path. Even when your fear is loud, your purpose can be louder. Aron survived because he refused to surrender to the moment. He refused to let the canyon decide his fate. Sometimes in life we feel trapped by circumstances we didn't choose. The story reminds you that the path out might be difficult, but not impossible. And sometimes survival begins with one simple thought. I'm still here, so I will keep going. Aron's story also teaches something about gratitude. After surviving, many people might focus only on what they lost. But Aron often spoke about what he gained, a deeper love for life, stronger relationships, and a clearer sense of purpose. That doesn't mean the pain disappeared. It means he refused to let pain define him completely. In American culture, gratitude is sometimes seen as a positive habit. But Aron showed that gratitude can also be a survival skill. It's what keeps you grounded. It's what keeps your mind from falling into darkness. Even in the canyon, when he recorded messages for his family, he didn't only say goodbye. He expressed love. He expressed appreciation. That kind of mindset can keep a person alive. Maybe tonight, as you listen, you can take something from that. Not the fear, but the awareness. The awareness that life is fragile. The awareness that every ordinary day is a gift. And even when hardship arrives, the human spirit can still find meaning. Aron didn't just escape. He evolved. And that's why his true story continues to move people. Year after year across America and beyond, there is a moment in every survival story where a person either gives up or keeps going. For Aron, that moment came over and over again. Not once, many times. He had days to stop trying, days to surrender, days to accept the worst. But he didn't. Instead, he kept searching for answers. He observed. He calculated. He adjusted his plans. That's what real survival looks like. It's not just strength. It's creativity under pressure. In America, people often say, where there's a will, there's a way. Aron became the living example of that phrase. Not in a motivational poster way, in a painfully real way. And even now, his story inspires people in different situations. Someone recovering from illness. Someone going through heartbreak. Someone feeling stuck in life. Because the canyon is a symbol too. It represents the moments we can't escape easily. The moments that feel too heavy. The moments that trap our spirit. Aron's true story reminds you. You might not control what happens to you, but you can control what you choose next. And sometimes that choice is all you need to begin surviving again. One of the most surprising parts of Aron's life is that he later found joy again. Real joy, not forced smiles, but genuine happiness. He built relationships. He continued exploring. He embraced life with a new kind of gratitude. That matters because many people believe trauma destroys a person forever. Sometimes it does. But sometimes it changes someone into a stronger version of themselves. Aron's story shows that healing is possible, even after extreme suffering. In America, mental health and emotional recovery have become important conversations. Aron became part of that conversation, even if he didn't plan to. His life proved that surviving something terrifying doesn't mean you have to stay trapped in it emotionally. You can carry the memory and still move forward. That message is gentle but powerful, especially at night when the mind becomes quiet. If you're listening right now and you've been through something painful, remember this. Your worst moment is not your whole identity. Aron was trapped, but he became free. Not just physically, mentally too. And that freedom didn't come from forgetting. It came from choosing life again every day, little by little. That's how recovery works. Quiet, steady, real. Aron's story also shows the raw power of nature. Not as an enemy, but as a force. In the desert, the weather can change fast. Temperatures shift dramatically between day and night. Dehydration comes quickly, and being alone magnifies every problem. People often underestimate deserts because they look open and empty. But that emptiness is the danger. When something goes wrong, there is no one nearby. For American hikers, Utah is famous for its beauty. Red rocks, deep canyons, endless sky. Aron went there because it felt alive. But he learned the hard way that beauty doesn't mean safety. Nature is neutral. It doesn't punish you out of anger. It simply follows its rules. A boulder fell because gravity exists. The canyon trapped him because stone doesn't move for human suffering. That reality can feel harsh, but it can also make us wiser. Aron's survival story encourages respect. Respect for the outdoors, respect for planning, and respect for life itself. And if you ever find yourself alone in a difficult moment, remember this: survival begins with accepting what is real. Aron accepted reality, and that acceptance gave him the power to act. Sometimes the biggest lessons come from the smallest decisions. Aron's trip began with something simple. He didn't tell anyone where he was going. That one choice almost cost him his life, and that's why this story matters beyond the canyon. It teaches how small habits can create huge consequences. In everyday life, we make decisions without thinking, skipping a message, ignoring a warning sign, taking a risk because it'll be fine. Most of the time it is fine, but sometimes it isn't. Aron's story reminds Americans that being prepared isn't weakness. It's wisdom. He wasn't careless. He was confident. And confidence can sometimes become a quiet danger. After surviving, Aron didn't become ashamed of his love for adventure. He became smarter about it. He learned how to respect risk. That is growth. And that's what makes this story night-friendly too. It's not only fear. It's reflection. It makes you think about your own life without shouting at you. If you're listening while lying in bed, maybe you can feel it. Life is built from small choices. And sometimes, one small choice can change everything. Aron lived to tell the story, and his truth continues to protect others. When Aron recorded his final messages in the canyon, he didn't know if he would live. That level of uncertainty changes a person forever. Most of us live as if tomorrow is guaranteed. We make plans, postpone dreams, and assume we'll have time. Aron didn't have that comfort. He had only the present moment. And in that moment, he chose to speak love into the camera. He didn't waste his last energy on anger. He focused on what mattered. That is why so many Americans felt emotional hearing his recordings. They weren't Hollywood scripts. They were real human words spoken in real fear. Those messages became a reminder. If life ended suddenly, what would we say? Who would we call? What would we regret? Aron's story forces that question in a quiet way, and the answer can change how people live. Because sometimes, true survival begins long before the emergency. It begins in how we treat people, how we appreciate our days, how we prepare. Aron almost lost everything, but he gained clarity. And that clarity is a gift for anyone listening, especially at night when the mind is open and honest. True stories like this don't just entertain, they awaken. Aron once said that he felt like he was reborn after leaving the canyon. Not in a dramatic way, but in a real personal way. He had seen how quickly life can end, and he decided he would live differently. He became more connected to family, more appreciative of everyday moments, more aware of what truly matters. That's something many people in America understand deeply. In a busy culture, it's easy to forget what's important. Work becomes everything. Stress becomes normal. Life becomes routine. Aron's story breaks that routine. It reminds people that life is fragile and time is limited. But it also offers hope. It shows that even after the worst moment, your future can still be meaningful. If you've ever felt stuck in your own problems, this story can feel like a quiet comfort. It says you can lose something and still keep moving forward. You can face fear and still find joy again. Aron didn't survive because he had everything. He survived because he refused to stop fighting for what remained. And that mindset can change anyone's life, even without a canyon. Sometimes the strongest people are not those who avoid pain, but those who transform it into purpose. There's a reason people still search for Aron's story online. There's a reason they listen to it late at night. It isn't just shock. It's something deeper. This story touches a human fear we all share, the fear of being alone when something goes wrong. But it also touches a human hope we all want to believe in. The hope that we can survive even the impossible. Aron's experience proves that impossible situations can happen. And yet survival is still possible. Not easy, not comfortable, but possible. The canyon tried to trap him forever. Time tried to weaken him. Fear tried to break his mind. But Aron stayed present. He stayed focused. He stayed alive. And when he finally left that canyon, the world looked different. The sky looked brighter. The air felt like a gift. That's what surviving something extreme can do. It makes life feel new. Tonight as you rest, let this story settle softly in your mind, not as fear, but as strength. Because real stories like this remind us, even when life feels heavy, the human spirit can still move forward. Quietly, slowly, step by step. Many Americans love survival stories because they reflect something about the national identity. Persistence, the belief that no matter how hard things get, you keep going. Aron Ralston became one of the most extreme examples of that belief. But what makes his story special is that he never asked to be a symbol. He was just a person who went hiking and made a mistake. That makes it real. And real stories hit harder than fiction, because they remind us this could happen to anyone. You don't have to be reckless to face danger. You just have to be human. Aron's story teaches that survival is not about being fearless. It's about facing fear and still acting. That's a lesson that applies to everyday life too. Sometimes people feel trapped by anxiety, by debt, by sadness, by uncertainty. Those traps may not be made of stone, but they feel just as heavy. And Aron's story whispers the same message: don't surrender. Not because everything will be perfect, but because you still have a chance. That chance is worth fighting for. This true story doesn't promise an easy life. It promises something more honest. Survival is painful, but possible. And the first step is refusing to give up. When you think about it, Aron's story is filled with contrasts. A bright sunny day turned into darkness. A peaceful canyon became a prison. An ordinary hike became a fight for life. That's how quickly life can flip. Many Americans who heard this story said it changed how they see their own lives. They started appreciating small things: drinking water, feeling sunlight, walking freely. Those things feel normal until they're taken away. Aron's survival reminds us not to wait for tragedy to become grateful, and it also reminds us to be careful with the confidence we carry. Confidence can be helpful, but overconfidence can be dangerous. Aron learned that lesson the hardest way possible. Still, he didn't let regret destroy him. He turned his regret into wisdom. And wisdom is what keeps a person alive long-term, not just physically, but emotionally. If you've had a difficult experience, you may understand that feeling. The feeling of being changed by pain. The feeling of seeing the world differently afterward. Tonight, let this story rest gently in your mind. Not as a nightmare, but as a quiet reminder. Life is precious, and your strength is deeper than you realize. There is a moment after survival where a person has to rebuild their identity. Aron went through that too. He wasn't only recovering physically, he was learning who he was now. That can be hard, because many people define themselves by what they can do. Their skills, their independence, their strength. Aron had always been an athlete and adventurer. After the canyon, he had to prove to himself that he was still valuable, still capable, still alive. And he did. Not by pretending nothing happened, but by adapting, by learning, by moving forward with humility. That humility made his story even more powerful. He didn't become a superhero. He became a survivor. And survivors often carry both pain and wisdom. Many Americans respect that kind of resilience, the kind that doesn't brag, the kind that quietly says, I went through something terrible and I'm still here. If you're listening tonight and you've felt broken before, remember this: broken doesn't mean finished. Aron lost part of his body, but he regained his life. And that trade, as brutal as it was, gave him a future he almost lost. That future became his proof that survival is worth it, even when it costs you everything. Sometimes people wonder what they would do if they were in Aron's place. Would they have the courage to survive? The truth is, nobody knows, because until you face a life or death moment, you don't understand what your mind and body will do. But Aron's story shows something important. Survival isn't only courage. It's clarity. It's the ability to accept reality, even when reality is cruel. Aron didn't waste time wishing the boulder would move. He tried, he failed, and he adapted, over and over again. That adaptability is what saved him. And that's a lesson people can apply in any situation. In work, in relationships, in hardship. Life doesn't always follow your plan. Sometimes it traps you in a place you never expected. But you still have choices. Even small choices matter. To breathe, to think, to take the next step, to ask for help when you finally can. Aron's story is extreme, but its lesson is simple. You are stronger than you think. Not because you're fearless, but because you can endure. Tonight, let that thought comfort you. Because survival is not just about escaping the worst. It's about continuing afterward, still choosing life. Aron's story became one of the most famous survival stories in modern American history. And yet it remains deeply personal. It wasn't a war. It wasn't a global disaster. It was one human being in one small canyon, and that is why it feels so close, because it shows how ordinary life can turn into extraordinary struggle in an instant. Aron didn't wake up thinking he would become a symbol of survival. He woke up thinking he was going on a simple adventure. But life had other plans, and still he survived. Not because he was chosen, not because he was special, but because he refused to let the situation end him. That's what makes this story timeless. People in the United States have always admired persistence. Aron gave that idea a real face, a real name, and a real event that no one could deny. As you listen late at night, maybe your life feels heavy, or uncertain, or overwhelming. Remember this, your hardest moment may not be the end. It may be the beginning of something new. Aron walked into the desert alone, but he walked out carrying a message for everyone. Survival is possible, even when it feels impossible. And sometimes the human spirit can do more than we ever imagined. The wilderness teaches humility. Aron learned that in the most painful way. But humility can be a gift too, because it reminds us that we are part of something larger than ourselves. The canyon didn't care about his goals, his plans, or his confidence. It only cared about physics and time. That sounds harsh, but it's also truth. In America, many people grow up believing they can control their future. And in many ways, that belief helps people succeed. But nature reminds us that some things are beyond control. Aron's story is a reminder that control is limited, but choices still exist. Even when trapped, he had choices. He could stop trying, or he could continue. He could surrender, or he could act. He chose action, and action saved him. That's why his story works so well for nighttime listening. It's not only excitement, it's reflection. It makes you think deeply about your own life, your own priorities. And when the world becomes quiet, stories like this can bring clarity. Not fear, clarity, because survival stories remind us what matters most: life, love, and the will to keep going, even when the path looks impossible. Aron later described the moment of rescue as unreal. Sitting in the helicopter, seeing the desert from above, he felt like he was watching someone else's life. That's what shock can do. It makes reality feel distant, but soon reality returned. The hospital, the recovery, the long process of healing, the months of rebuilding his strength. Aron wasn't just surviving anymore. He was living again. And living requires its own courage. Many people think the hardest part is the emergency itself. But sometimes the hardest part comes after, when you have to face the memory and still move forward. Aron did that. He didn't stay trapped in the canyon emotionally. He used the experience to become more grateful, more aware, and more present. And that is something Americans admire deeply, turning pain into purpose. Not pretending pain never happened, but letting it become fuel for a better life. Tonight, if you're listening and you feel tired from your own struggles, remember this: survival isn't always dramatic. Sometimes survival is simply waking up tomorrow and choosing to try again. Aron did that over and over until he rebuilt his life, and his story continues to whisper hope to anyone who hears it. There are true stories that entertain us, and then there are true stories that change us. Aron's story belongs in the second category because it doesn't just show danger, it shows what humans are capable of when life demands everything. Aron made a mistake, a human mistake. He went alone. He didn't tell anyone. He assumed he would be fine. And then reality happened. But his response to reality became the reason people still talk about him. He stayed calm when panic would have been easier. He stayed focused when surrender would have been natural. He survived when the odds looked impossible. That is not just a survival story. It's a story of choice. And maybe that's why Americans stay hooked. Because deep down, everyone wants to believe they would choose life too. Tonight, as you rest, let this story remind you of something simple. You are stronger than you think. Not because you never break, but because you can keep moving even when you feel broken. Aron didn't survive because the world saved him. He survived because he refused to stop fighting for himself. And in the quiet of the desert, he proved that the human spirit can do the impossible. If Aron could leave one message for people, it would probably be this: don't take your life for granted. Because when you lose freedom for even a moment, you realize how valuable it is. Being able to walk, being able to drink water, being able to call someone you love. Those things feel ordinary until they disappear. Aron's story reminds Americans to appreciate the basics, to love louder, to plan smarter, to live more intentionally. And it also reminds people that mistakes don't have to end you. Mistakes can teach you. Aron's canyon became his hardest lesson, but also his strongest teacher. He didn't run from his past. He used it. And that is a powerful example for anyone listening tonight. Maybe you've made mistakes too. Maybe you regret something. Maybe you feel stuck in a place you didn't choose. Remember this: you can still change your direction. You can still walk toward a better future. Aron's story proves that life can be rebuilt after devastation. Not easily, not instantly, but step by step. And sometimes the first step is simply believing you still have a future. Aron believed, he fought, and he lived to tell the truth. The desert is quiet at night. The stars are bright. The wind moves gently across the rocks. It's hard to imagine that such beauty could hold such danger. But that's how nature works. It can be breathtaking and brutal in the same breath. Aron entered that landscape with confidence, and he left it with wisdom. His story is not about fear alone. It's about respect. Respect for nature, respect for preparation, and respect for life. In America, where people love open roads and wild spaces, this story stays important. It reminds people that freedom is powerful, but safety is part of freedom too. And for those who listen at night, this story becomes something else, a quiet reminder to live with awareness. Tomorrow is not guaranteed, but tonight, you are here, you are alive, and your life matters. Aron's experience teaches that even in the darkest moments, survival is possible. And not only survival, growth is possible. He didn't just escape a canyon. He gained a deeper understanding of what it means to be human. And that is why this true story continues to reach people, long after the desert has gone silent again. Some listeners hear Aron's story and feel fear, others feel inspiration. But most people feel something deeper, perspective. Because it's easy to forget how quickly life can change. One moment you're walking in the sun. The next moment you're fighting for survival. Aron's story reminds us that nothing is guaranteed. Not safety, not comfort, not time. And that might sound scary, but it can also be freeing. When you accept that life is fragile, you stop wasting it. You stop postponing love. You stop ignoring what matters. Aron survived, and he carried that awareness into his future. He lived with more gratitude and more purpose. That purpose became his quiet gift to America and the world. A reminder that life is precious and resilience is real. Tonight, if your mind feels heavy, let this story remind you that hard moments can pass. Even when the situation feels impossible, there may still be a path forward. Not a perfect path, not an easy one, but a path. Aron found it in the most extreme way, and his true story continues to whisper the same message. Keep going. Step by step, breath by breath, you may be closer to freedom than you think. The reason this story stays in people's hearts is because it feels human. It shows fear, mistakes, regret, pain, but it also shows strength, love, hope, and an unstoppable will to survive. Aron didn't survive because he wanted attention. He survived because life inside him refused to go out quietly. That is something every listener can understand. We all have moments where we feel trapped, maybe not by stone, but by pressure, exhaustion, or uncertainty. And in those moments, we need reminders that survival is possible. This true story is that reminder. In the canyon, Aron thought he was alone, and physically he was. But emotionally, he wasn't. He carried memories of people who loved him. He carried the future he still wanted. That connection gave him strength. And when you think about it, that's what keeps most people alive in hard times. Connection. The desire to return to those we love. The desire to finish our story. Tonight, as you rest, let this story be more than entertainment. Let it be perspective. A soft wake-up call. A reminder that life is precious and that you are stronger than you know. Aron Ralston's story is one of those rare true events that becomes a legend. Not because it's exaggerated, but because it's unbelievable and real at the same time. He went into the desert alone, chasing adventure. And he came out carrying wisdom that most people never gain in a lifetime. His story warns us to plan, to respect nature, to never underestimate risk. But it also inspires us to keep going when life becomes painful. It shows that survival is not always heroic or beautiful. Sometimes survival is messy, terrifying, and lonely. Yet it's still worth it. Because beyond the darkness, life can still continue. And that's what Aron proved. He survived the canyon. He survived the aftermath. He rebuilt his future. And in doing so, he left behind something powerful for every listener. The truth that human strength is deeper than we realize. Tonight, as you fall asleep, let this story stay with you softly, not as fear but as hope. Because if a person can survive something like that, then maybe you can survive whatever you're facing too, and tomorrow you can try again. This is the end of Aron Ralston's true survival story. A story that began with a simple adventure in the Utah desert. and turned into one of the most unforgettable moments in American real-life history. It reminds us that nature is powerful, that mistakes can be costly, and that life can change in seconds. But it also reminds us of something even stronger, the human will to live. Aron faced silence. He faced fear. He faced time running out. And still, he chose life, not because it was easy, but because he refused to surrender. If you remember anything from this story, remember this: even when you feel trapped, there may still be a way forward. Sometimes the way forward is slow. Sometimes it's painful. Sometimes it's hard to imagine. But it exists. Tonight, as you rest, take a deep breath and let your mind be calm. You made it through today. You're still here. And like Aron, you still have tomorrow. Good night. If this true story kept you listening, you'll love the next real events we're bringing to life. Subscribe now for more unforgettable American true stories. Calm, cinematic, and real. And tonight, as you rest, remember, survival begins with hope and one more step forward.